Grief is a universal experience that touches everyone at some point in their lives. Despite its prevalence, many of us struggle to find the right words to support our friends and family who are grieving. We are joined by Heidi Dunstan, grief educator for Lean Into Grief. Heidi, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Grief is complex, and I would love for you to share with us what grief really is.
Yeah, so it's a normal and natural response to change or loss of any kind. So it isn't just about death, but it can be about change in life, change in circumstances. But a lot of people associate grief with death, and it's an umbrella term that covers a lot of emotions like sadness, depression, anger. You know, we talk about the 5 stages of dying or 5 stages of grief. You know, people bargain, but it also could be like gratitude. It could be, you know, relief. It could have a lot of different emotions. And so that's why it's so complex, is because people move through this whole umbrella of emotions, and we as people outside don't necessarily know where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about grief, just as we know it today, we, like you said, associate it with death and with sadness. And what are some other ways that grief forms, some less common ways?
Yeah, like lots of people tend to try to, you know, especially in the early days, weeks, months, even maybe the first couple of years, if it's a major loss in their life, they'll have sadness, they'll have anger, they'll have regret, they'll have guilt, they'll have lots of different emotions. But, you know, when I lost my husband, I'm now grateful I had him. You know, and so gratitude can come in, legacy comes in of trying to carry on people's memories. You know, when we lose our parents, like our moms, we always want to make mom's recipe that mom was good at, or we do things that dad taught us how to do, or what our grandparents did. And those legacy pieces help us to find meaning in the people that were in our lives, the legacy of them.
Mm-hmm. And when we're speaking to someone, or we have someone close to us who has experienced a loss of some sort and is grieving, it's a challenging situation, and I feel many of us don't know what to say. What is the appropriate way to approach someone who is grieving when you want to offer support and be there for them?
For sure. And you know, a lot of us are ill-equipped. We don't talk about this stuff. And so be open and say, hey, you know what, I see that you're hurting. I see that this person was important to you, and I want to be here with you. And know that I don't always have the right words, but you're important to me and I want to be here. Holding that space is a lot better than, I'm sorry for your loss and call me if you need me.
Yeah, I feel that some have the initial response of kind of withdrawing or pushing away from the people that are closest to them when they're experiencing grief. What advice do you have for someone who is trying to offer support to that person who is pulling away?
Lots of times people say, I don't even know what I need. And so sometimes it's really helpful to just offer what you can. Hey, I'm going to the grocery store today. Can I pick up some groceries for you? Or, you know, can I pick your kids up from school or take them to school for you? Can I, you know, whatever it is, those little things can make such a big difference, because, you know, grief has kind of taken over their whole brain. And so life is a little bit more complicated. And so showing up in ways that they don't necessarily know they need can be really helpful, because they don't necessarily have the ability to ask for what they need.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing what to do, right? And I think that the reason why a lot of people maybe end up falling silent in these situations because they're scared to say the wrong thing. So what are some things not to do in offering support for someone who's grieving?
For sure. We often use platitudes. We don't love watching the people we care about be in pain. And so we tend to find these platitudes to say, oh, time heals all wounds, or everything happens for a reason, or at least they're not suffering. But you need to remember that the person that is suffering is right in front of you. They've lost somebody that's important to them. And so avoiding saying those kind of things can make such a big difference, because they do miss the mark.
Yeah. Heidi, where can our audience go for more resources on how to help someone and offer support for a griever?
Yeah, definitely. You know what, like when it's early on, mealtrain.com, setting up an account for somebody so that people can send out a link and say, hey, bring meals to people, and that they don't end up with 17 lasagnas is a great resource. Looking at David Kessler's website, He's got some great resources there. My website, HeidiDunstan.ca.
Wonderful, Heidi. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and having this conversation on this topic that needs to be talked about more. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
We're back after this.